Hi, everybody. It's Rick and Liza. We're glad to be with you tonight. Tonight's going to be, and Susan's with us too, and she's probably down in Virginia. But who knows? Tonight's going to be a hellacious discussion because Liza and I have been tossing this up and down for several days, and it's very difficult. It's just like me to put a very difficult problem in my own lap. But anyhow, I'm very glad that we're doing it. I feel very guided to do it. And what tonight is about is what I call a spiritual conglomeration and how to work through it. And I guess I want to say a couple of things before I turn her switch on, because she's got a lot of really good things to add. What impelled me to do this evening is the sitting with clients after client after client after client who have their mouth zipped. And it's zipped because of their religion. I cannot tell you what that does to me. I understand it. I was raised as a Catholic. I'm a recovering Catholic, and I'm in a mood and with a charge to destroy every religion I can, if I could. And that's not because they don't love God. It's because what the religions have done to it. That's what I got to say. And I know there are really good-hearted people on this show, which is why I do it every week for free. But I've seen so many people say, I can't do it against my religion. And people are so stuffed and they're so repressed because of this bullshit that we call religion. And I got off on the wrong track because tonight's not really about religion. Tonight is about gobbledygook that has got into our spiritual drive. I've watched the spiritual movement since '69, which is when it really got started. And we're making a lot of really good progress. But the point is now the world is in such a foul shape that it's very tough on me. People come to me because they want me to tell them that it's going to end. It's not fair to me. They want me to tell them all this shit's going to go back to normal and we're all going to be okay. And I'm not going to do it because I don't believe it. Now, we have good opinions. We have a good, broad knowledge of many different religions and philosophies. I don't know what to do. I reach out to this show just like you reach out to it. I'm looking forward to your participation and unpredictably, as I saw the needle going from astrology towards spirituality, the needle kept going back and forth, and I was prompted by different people to turn more and more towards spirituality. What ended up happening, it stopped being my astrology show and it became our spiritual show by itself. And I got nothing else to say about that.
When you say our show, you're including all of your viewers and participants.
Well, I would have to explain that very clearly.
Well, you were kind of pointing to me.
See, I would not want anybody to misunderstand me. I was talking about us, our show. Look what we have done. Look why we come together every week. So tonight, I've put my heart out there to Liza. I've explained where I'm coming from, and she's had wonderful things to say. I mean, she's really just so down to earth and sane and patient and all the things I'm not. But what I was saying to her before the show started, when you taste the ineffable through meditation, through music, through breathing, through reading, when you taste it, There's nothing else you can do except want more of it, because it's the way. And when I look at the earth, and I'm a Capricorn, my job is to dismantle corrupt institutions and replace them with institutions that work. And I have no idea how to do it. We've screwed up so much, so badly. I have no idea whatsoever how to start again, because it always goes back to the people with the big money. Are they going to share the money with the rest of us? I don't see it happening. And Liza's had some very good responses to that, but that's where I'm coming from tonight. And I'm very happy that you're here with us. It means a lot to me. Go ahead. With anything,
Okay.
whatever you
Well,
want to say.
just building on what Rick's talking about and what we've been talking about, and honestly, this subject is part of our conversation on a pretty regular basis, even aside from the show. But when he's talking about religion and the negative effects that has on us, I think he's talking about the political church and the institutional institutions of religion, rather than the one-on-one experience with spirit. And certainly institutionalized religion seems to have a lot to gain by keeping us under their thrall, and for all kinds of political and financial reasons and reasons of power and all of that stuff. You may all disagree with me, but that's kind of how I have seen it too.
It doesn't matter if I disagree. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Say what you have to say.
I am.
Good, because you're very good.
Okay. Well, I've done a lot of thinking about this since Rick asked me to be on the show, and I reflected on and have referred to some of the people, writers and philosophers and people who've influenced my thinking. And basically, astrologically, and from a perspective of historians, and from a perspective of scientists and people who study the mind, I think all of these people that I've read and have been influenced by have talked about the importance of just being ourselves, our best selves, and not getting caught up in other people, no matter whether they're with the church or our parents or whatever, telling us what we need to do. You know, it comes back to being kind to ourselves and being kind to others, and being real is the important thing.
Well put.
So
very well.
I would be interested in what everybody else has to say about that.
So what I'm talking about tonight, there's a complete difference between transcendence into our spiritual body, spiritual self, and get along with this crap that we call religion. Most people that I know that are religious are doing what they're doing because they don't want daddy to come downstairs and beat their butt. It's that simple. That's how ingrained it is. They don't want daddy to hear him say something wrong, to come down beat our butt. We're in the wrong club. Let's get in the right club. That ain't got nothing to do with spirituality, which is transcending to what Christ was telling us about, to the Christ self inside, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Two completely different things. Completely. Go ahead. I can hear the words bubbling up.
Okay. Well, I think that so much of what we do and what we feel, why we feel guilty about so many things, is really because of the whole daddy thing. I think there's a lot of buried trauma and fear that that affects us, and that certainly now there's so much being written about
On,
treating
on Earth.
unearthed and being learned about trauma and ways to, and there are so many more effective ways of treating trauma, whether we're talking about, and probably a combination of these things, but psychotherapy and a lot of neurologic treatments, like actually physical treatments
Right.
of the brain and the body that
Right.
can help us with trauma, and to realize that a lot of these feelings of guilt and negativity and lack of self-worth really are related to childhood experiences, and that some of the research shows that trauma is actually passed on physically. They can see that in the brain, they can see in the DNA, although there are things that we can do to mitigate it. There's actually physical evidence that trauma is inherited, and that explains an awful lot if you think about it. Especially it affects everybody, I think, but look at the lives of people who have been what's the word? Look at Black people who have gone through generations
God.
in this country alone of being traumatized. And there's a book called My Grandmother's Hands, which is written by a Black social worker who treats groups of people regarding their trauma. And he talks about the inherited trauma of Black people, but he also treats white people, because we've been traumatized as well, especially by our own trauma of Black people. But individually, of course, we all go through that. So, but I'm thinking that unearthing that trauma and realizing that we're basically innocent of all of these things that we carry in the back of our minds, it can be very freeing and give us the courage to be the best person that we can be, to get in touch with spirit, and to be a very open and helpful person in the world.
Oh, very good points. So I think everybody understands, in my experience, my father came to me during my wedding and congratulated me, and I didn't know how to act. I thought he was talking to somebody else. I didn't know what he was talking about. And I hear these stories so much for so many clients. It's just astounding to me that we haven't all killed each other. It's astounding. How did we all get this far? And we're doing basically pretty good with each other. It's really shocking. So when people come to me or us and they want me to astrologically pick some gem out of the sky, oh, it's going to last 1.3 more years, then it's going to go back to normal. I mean, don't lay that bullshit on me. You see how it got here. We all know how it got here. So I have said my piece, and Liza said her piece beautifully, and we're very interested in any of you, whatever you want to say. And I forgot to tell you, I'm so sorry. Rick is a third. He's 33% of tonight's show, and I forgot to even go there because I was so hot and bothered. Rick, whatever you'd like to say, just go ahead, buddy.
Well, I definitely think that your phrase of gobbledygook, I take that to suggest there are many bugs in the processing system of our understanding of spirituality and religion both. And we have to definitely separate what is godly and what is the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
That is sad. Having been a Catholic myself, I look to the history of the church, and I think everything started to go downhill when the church got in bed with Rome.
Yeah.
That was the big kickoff
Yeah.
to looking for
May
worldly
I
power.
interrupt 1 second?
Considered adding.
I walked into the doorway of the Vatican in 1978 with my parents. And I was 26 years old. And I looked up, and it was so unbelievably astounding to see just the arches of the doorway. And in that doorway is carved all the names of the companies that worked on it. Not the workers, but the companies who had their own slaves. And so I walk in, and half of me is going, wow, this place is astounding. And the other half of me wants to throw up. What do you do with that? What do you do with these kinds of things? I'm sorry.
I think the first
I
thing
had
is,
to insert that. Go ahead, Rick.
yeah, well, all of us look back at what we have wanted to learn, questioned, considered as we grew up in our faith, whatever that was. And we are looking now as adults, how do we not sabotage ourselves by throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Exactly. That's a good question.
It is the question. And for my own processing with other people as I do readings, I absolutely work on specifically trying to help them find their path, their spirituality. What will they focus on? What has their soul been nurtured towards? Where is their growth? Where is their trajectory? And in that, I think we find a lot more peace of mind, because you can always make more sense of yourself than something that everybody else is predicating. There was something else that you said that I made a note of. Oh, you had talked about different things that I just want to throw out there. I believe in miracles, but I also believe in medicine. So as far as the science goes, we have to go ahead and work within that at times too, as far as anybody who's looking for healing work, you know? I think that's important to remember. Science is still going to be somewhat helpful. And
Well, I agree with that completely. And
yeah,
as far as miracles, because I have spent 30 years with the Course in Miracles myself, I took them a little bit of my own medicine the other day, because out of nowhere, one of our neighbors here has become very unfriendly to us for no reason at all. Very unfriendly, to the point of we're not like sure what this person might do. And I turned it around, and I was reading the Course, and I forgave him inside myself a couple weeks ago. He didn't do anything, but I just let go of the bad vibes. I let go of, I don't know what I did, but let's just clear this up. Now he's talking to me. Almost to the minute. And that's a beautiful miracle statement out of the Course, which is directly about that type of thing. So how do we work on this on a larger scale? And I think Liza has the real answer about doing your work, which is why last week was successful with Michael and talking about doing the work of Byron Katie. That was a very good session. So I want to hear. Thank you, Rick. That was really good. I want to hear from all of you.
Well, I can relate so much to what you're both saying and Liza, because I had an upbringing that was really interesting in terms of religion. I grew up a lot of different religions, Catholic and really like evangelical Christian, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon at one point. I grew up with a mother that was quite confused about a lot of things. So as I grew up, and that was just a little bit that I remember, it was all the time, like different religions all the time, but she took it seriously for a certain amount of time. It really forced me as I grew up to really, I've always been really spiritual, but when you're a kid, you don't say these things, and you just feel something, and I just feel like God is with me. But, and then I had all these rules and all this shit that, and the guilt, all this guilt about just
Plus she was a Gemini, right?
Yes. But the point in me saying this is it really, as I grew up, really forced me to really figure out what God was to me, and who it included none of that. And well, maybe not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it was really me and God, me and myself and God, me and myself and love, me and myself and others, me and myself in connection, and me and myself. And it had nothing to do with what they were teaching or
Exactly.
preaching. And
Exactly.
it was really, now that I think of it, it was a real symptom of a lot of other things in my childhood, but it was really great, for it led me to myself.
Well, you're a very smart woman too.
Yeah.
Not many people can do that.
Religion is a
Thank-
really
Thank you,
interesting
Claudia.
thing.
That was very,
Mhm.
very well said. Look, there's what's his name? Starts with an S.
Shelby.
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 There's Shelby.
Shelby's in the picture now.
There's Shelby. Linda,
Hello.
you just muted yourself.
Hello.
What
Did
are
you want-
these thoughts? What are these thoughts ignite in your mind?
Well, I think I have some things in common with Claudia in this way. I grew up, my parents did not force church on me. I forced church on me. My mother didn't go, my dad didn't go. After like 12 years old, my brother didn't go. And I was routine. All my friends were at church, and there was a sort of a Bible thumping evangelical preacher who wanted us all to be born again. And I was suspicious of all of that. But there was a lot of things I got out personally of going to church. It's like I was in the building, but I wasn't of it. I was me, doing this. And then I went to a school, an undergraduate college that started out to be a fairly socially conservative place, but not a place, and they made you go to church, every day. But which was sort of an imposition, I thought, at 9 a.m. But but it didn't seem to personally impinge on me. But when I first got there, but by the time I was halfway through, I saw the political side of it starting to invade the religion. And it wasn't just you were religiously conservative, or you were, enthralled to this Protestant, what I would call it capitalistic Protestantism.
Exactly.
Capitalistic Protestantism. It was like they were going to impose it on the school paper and all these other aspects of it. And what that did was 100% turn me off of political conservatism, number one, and any Protestant denominations, pretty much at all. And then I had a friend who was Catholic, and I used to take her to mass because she didn't have a car. That's where I went with her. And I discovered how freeing it was to sit in, a place of worship, and not feel like I was in the church, but, like in terms of belonging to it, the institution, but I was in a space where I could take an hour and do my own thing, you know, and then I end up at a Catholic institution and, you know, there's a lot of people there. The people sort of in charge there are doing their own thing. I mean, Rome does not mean a whole lot there. I mean,
Well, you have put the perfect phrase on this, I think. Capitalistic religions. That's exactly what it is. And it's so beautifully said. And I think if they're dying. And I think they should die.
well, and you know, when I, you know, at La Roche University where I am, you know, there's usually 1 or 2 Sunday masses, and they're packed. They're packed with people trying to get away from the actual institutional church, because the priests that serve mass at school are not laying down that capitalistic religious thing. They're talking about love your neighbor. They're talking about you know, a personal relationship with the spiritual. They're talking about you know, our actual priest does a lot of his sermonizing through Broadway musicals. he'll say, you know, as in this Broadway musical, and then there'll be the lyrics, and then there'll be whatever he's saying. He's just trying to help us be better. You know, he doesn't talk about politics, but he talks about the importance of love and loving your neighbor, and, you know, caring about that stuff. And for me, you know, I mean, I don't go as often as I might, because I have other things going on through the week. You know, I teach class during mass in the morning and the afternoon and so on. But I go when I feel the need to be part of the community, and the community is not the church. The community is the people sitting with me. Those people, those specific individual people are my community. And the specific religion I'm subscribing to is the religion that says, love, you know, that says what Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. That's the bottom line for me. And I think the churches, institutional churches, are just dying because they have nothing to offer. Nothing. Not a thing. No, I mean, you could go and sit in there. What, you know, you don't, I just don't understand. I don't understand how it came to that, but they can't get anybody to go. They can't get young people to join. We can't even get young people to go to mass for the most part.
Well, it's
no.
obvious how it got to this point.
So
So
that's
the question is, how do we get out of it, and what do we replace it with? I think it's pretty safe to say, with Eris being so strong, that this is the age of trauma.
Oh.
The age of learning about it, discovering it, digging it up, finding solutions to it. And I think that certainly when you look at Eris and Pluto together, it makes sense. You know, and I think there's some encouragement in that. Thank you, Linda. That was really well put. I wonder what things are like way out in San Francisco. You are muted. I wonder how San Francisco is doing under all this.
Well, I'm not San Francisco, but I'm
Yeah, but you're
near
close
San
enough.
Francisco.
God,
And San Francisco is very interesting when it comes to religion. I mean, they probably have
I'm
like
near
a
West
church
Virginia.
of Satan even.
So you're in San Francisco.
Well, I was interested in religion and worship and just secrets from the time that I was a tiny child, and I observed my parents, who were very staunchly Catholic, coming from Poland, living through the war, where people were praying with bombs coming down on their heads constantly, you know, looking for the protection of God, praying their rosary. So I got that emotional part of it, and I could see what my grandmothers were doing. You know, I had the religious medals. My daughter got the blessed medal and all this kind of stuff. And I went to a Catholic high school taught by Dominican nuns. So I got to see the close up you know, what it's like to be around them, and I would be around after hours. You know, there are a lot of good things going on. Only bad thing was there were no boys. It was an all-girls school. But we got a great education. But I got to see how some of the sisters were after hours when they didn't think anybody was hearing. And I heard some curse words and some angry people. And I thought, oh, okay. They might pray a lot and they might appear to be holy the way they're dressed, but they're down underneath all that stuff. They're regular people, just like everybody else. So I guess this is not a solution. And then I proceeded to study comparative religions. I wanted to know what all the different religions thought. I wanted to know, like, how did people come up with religion and about God and everything. And I did my term paper on the Spanish Inquisition, which was not very much appreciated, needless to say. But it was like, how can you do these things in the name of God? And it was just, I've always questioned religion and dogmatism. And in any religion, I know people from so many different backgrounds in religion. I know people that are incredibly beautiful people that are Muslim. I know very spiritual people that are Hindu, that are Buddhist, that are agnostic, who don't believe in God, period, but they're wonderful people. And I've been watching The Righteous Gemstones lately on TV, which is a real hoot because it makes fun of how they, you know, capitalize on, you know, send me your $20 and we'll pray for you type of religion. So I agree that all the, you know, people like Jesus or Joan of Arc or Muhammad, or, you know, the people that other people followed, they had the same thread, and then it just went askew as people started putting money and power into it, and then they wanted to grab it and hold on to it and not share it and not allow women to be priests and subjugate, you know, and they always keep going back to the same BS and ruining everything that could have been beautiful. But, you know, this is how we learn, you know. And I was in Peru and I saw how the people were wonderful. And then the minute gold came in, they started picking some people to be slaves. And it's true. Money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
The love
So,
of money.
the love of money. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. The inordinate love of money, because that means that you don't love yourself the way you are. You want to buy more because you're not happy. You feel like you need all these things that are going to cost money. So I don't know, spirituality and religion is just something that I'm always looking to learn more about, and you see more about it all the time. And it's different in every generation. I'm seeing how the kids are dealing with it now. You know, they're not getting married, but they're in long-term relationships for several years. And maybe if they decide, you know, to have a child, they might get married, but things keep changing, you know. The cycles are interesting, and hopefully we're evolving and won't go back to the ice age again and start back with like 1,000 people on the planet or something. Hopefully not. So yeah, so it's a daily thing in my mind.
Naomi, how things down under? Thank you, Erica.
It's interesting. I grew up a Catholic, and I wasn't made to go to church, but I went because I liked to be in the presence of something that I felt that was bigger than myself. And now for the last 17 years working in a Buddhist temple, that seems to be my experience of it. It makes sense because it's like with Buddhism, it's 98% to do with understanding your mind and
What's
understanding
that?
You there?
98% what?
To do with the mind, understanding the mind and the monkey mind and the function of the mind. So from my experience, it makes sense and it gives me something practical to do. There's something I can work with this. It's not, all responsibility has come back to myself, how I live this life and understanding my mind and, doing good deeds and cause and effect. And it's, it makes sense to me. But growing up Catholic, I just kind of felt there was something more to everything except beyond myself. But then, working in a Buddhist temple for all these years, it's very political and there's a lot of stuff that goes on, which is like not Buddhism at all. And you see
Here we
it,
go
the
again.
capitalism, like money, it's a Chinese Buddhist temple. So, and then what happens as well with religion is our culture comes into it. So a Catholic church in Mexico or one in Ireland, completely different ceremonies, different things happen. Buddhist temple in Sri Lanka and one in China, completely different ceremonies and the culture influences all religion around the world. As it's split off to different sections in the world, it's just a natural formation that happens. I think the Catholic Church in Mexico and Ireland is a perfect example of the influences from the culture and their belief system that seeps into the religion. But with Buddhism, it's it's not a religion, it's a philosophy. And the Buddha says if you believe in God or you don't, it makes no difference. The responsibility comes to you every moment, every thought you have, every action, everything that you do minute by minute, it comes back to oneself. But
Beautifully said.
yeah, but it's still with that spirituality, I still believe, like, with God, I feel I can do both. I can do, not Catholic as in such, but there is an essence that more than I can describe that we say is God within us, with the practicality of the Buddhism.
Things are
Right.
changing so fast.
Yeah.
It's big.
I was thinking about what you said, Naomi, about meditation and being quiet, which is a large part of the Buddhist practice, and thinking of things in our own minds, and thinking about how in the early days of humanity, when things were quiet, people could notice and pay attention more to things around them, and think their own thoughts without being interrupted and having all this confusion. And I think that all of the monetization and the politicization and confusion in the world, as things have, quote, progressed, have really not afforded us those opportunities like you have, in your Buddhist work. And maybe some of us here do take time to meditate and think and have quiet time, but generally society doesn't offer that to us for the most part. And I think people get lost and don't have a sense of their spirituality and God because of all of that chaos and confusion that's around us all the time.
Yeah, I agree fully. It's because it's in those moments of those meditation or silent retreat, and it's in the gap that you can allow to be, and huge insights can come with, just on a day-to-day level of what needs to be done. Instead of coming from the thinking mind, you come more from your heart, and you respond better. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Exactly. Thank you, Naomi. Wild ginger. She's not just ginger. She's wild ginger. She must be growing wildly. Yeah. What are you two up to?
Well, about 5'3", of course. Well, what I wanted to add to the conversation, and I hope it helps. Yeah, I always consider myself more spiritual, even from a very early age. Like I grew up in a church. It was a very evangelical church, and there were all of these rules. And yet my grandmother was teaching the Native American religion. And there was always a conflict between those two systems. And I always felt more connected when I was in nature and out in the woods than I ever did when I was in a building with a bunch of people who were telling me all of these rules for my life. So I always had this conflict. I mean, I've been Mennonite. I actually was a, plainclothes wearing Mennonite for a while. I kept trying to find the perfect fit, and none of them seemed to fit. The Native American was closest, to kind of, because daily meditation, being connected with the earth is very much a part of the daily practice. But I had 3 near-death experiences, and in the third one, it's like when I finally put it together. And it was about when I came back, I realized that they were all right and they were all wrong at the same time. That the common thread was love, and that we're here to have joy. We're here to be joy. We're here to love passionately and fiercely every single day, ourselves and our own human beings. And the love has to start with yourself. If you can't love yourself fully, you can't pass it on to others. You have to love yourself so fiercely that your cup overflows. And I realized that that was the core of all religions, yet the institutions have strayed so far and made it about politics and made it about division. It's not about division at all. It's about oneness. And that's just kind of the conclusion that I've come to, since 2017. You have anything to add, Scott?
Religion is a hotbed for me, and that's one of these things that if I get on it, we'll be here a very long time. It's I'll go further than even the institutions. I think, Naomi mentioned about culture coming into religion. I would rephrase that a little bit to say religion comes out of culture. We've got the cultures there. Those cultures develop religious beliefs consistent with their view of life, the world, the afterlife, and those kinds of things. I've like many, I've come out of a long religious background. It's from the mainline denominational Protestant to charismatic to evangelical, and one of the biggest problems that I had with all of that and still wrestle with, even though I haven't darkened the doorway of a church in 5 years, is the idea of expectations of behavior, that I'm expected to behave a certain way, that things are supposed to happen a certain way.
Exactly.
And so, and then struggling, one of my biggest struggles, and I experienced this a number of times, I've concluded that the people that know the mind of God are the people in charge of the churches. They absolutely have the mind of God, and the people sitting in the pews or the rows or the chairs or whatever don't. That's the prevailing mindset.
Yeah.
Because, well, we prayed about it. So did I. And guess what? We had conflicting answers. Now, if we could actually talk to God, he would tell us, you're probably both wrong. But, but there's still that overhanging concept of a rightness and a wrongness. There's that overriding concept of God has a perfect plan for you. And Ginger and I have had this conversation before. I said, I don't care if God has a perfect plan for me. if you could just give me an indication that kind of this is the path to go down. I'm not going to tell you that, as a novelist, as we read novels, we don't want to know what the end of the story is. We would kind of like to know what chapter we're in. And I feel a lot of times that in going through life, I'm not even sure what book I'm reading. And so it's hard to even know the chapter that I'm in and where the story's going and those kinds of things. And that's been a huge struggle for me as I've been reapprising. What does it mean to be spiritual? What does divinity mean? What does deity mean? Is there a God that who is all powerful, all knowing, all loving, who has a perfect plan for my life? Or is God up there rolling the dice and saying, let's see how this one comes out? And I'm at the point of saying, I don't know. And just trying to really, again, I think it was Naomi that made the point that it all comes back to me. It all comes back to each one of us and how we approach life, how we're approaching the people that we deal with, how we're approaching the earth that we live on. And like Ginger, I have found greater peace in the woods or on a lake than I've ever found in a church. I used to joke, I don't do it so much anymore, but I've done theater, and I've been more at home in a theater than I was in any church setting. And so that's kind of that's where I'm at in my journey, for what it's worth.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Susan, who's been patiently waiting. Not heard from you for a few weeks. Thank you, Scott. Susan, what's on your mind today?
What's on my mind is you Christians are fascinating. Sorry, I was raised by wolves, 2 Holocaust survivors. They were barely human, let alone religious. And Judaism is nothing like Christianity, apparently, from what I'm hearing, except somehow the Protestant work ethic gets everybody, I guess. Gotta work, gotta be productive. Yeah. What if I told you that you had an intercom system built in, direct pipeline to divinity? And it works both ways, just like any other intercom system.
Exactly.
Well, that's all I need to know. I'm done.
That's a good answer. That's what was it? Who's the guy, the scientist with the car? Nikola Tesla. Yeah, he said we are all receivers. We are receivers. Do we shut up long enough to receive? Are we listening? Thank you. That was good, Susan. Real good. Teresa?
Yeah, I kind of agree with just about everything people are saying here tonight. I think most humans are just trying to feel connected. I guess religion sort of helped people to feel connected to a group, so that we didn't feel alone. I grew up in a Catholic family, strict. Although my mother had Edgar Cayce books and all kinds of other books in the house. And, and Dad was a little bit beyond his time too. He always used to say that the Catholic Church doesn't talk enough about the Holy Spirit. And that's what you hear about in the Course in Miracles. And that's what the Course in Miracles, one of the things that they've done for me, or it's done for me, it's teaching, is to realize that we don't place enough emphasis on our spirit, on who we are, our own divinity, like Susan was saying, because that's what I believe, that's how we're connected.
Exactly. What are we doing? What are we doing when we pray? what's consisted of our prayers? What are we praying for? Our football team to win? More bread on the table?
Yeah.
Am I praying for Bill so that Bill gets healed? What happens if I don't ask God? God says, now I'm not going to heal him. But since Rick asked, I'm going to heal him. We are so clueless to what's really going on. And in the last 15 minutes, we're really touching on what's really right, what's really real. When we talk about the Holy Spirit, because you can feel that inside.
And one of the things that the Course in Miracles has taught me too, another thing, it's taught me many things besides just forgiveness, is that I like the idea that it teaches that we are solely responsible. It all comes back to each one of us, how we view the world. Totally. It's a projection. How we view the world is simply a projection of what's happening inside of us. And if we follow that idea, then there are no more victims in this world.
Exactly.
There are no more perpetrators in this world. There is no more judgment in this world. And so it's all getting down to what some of you were saying earlier, that there should be only one religion, if you want to call it the word religion, but one way to live, and that's love. And when we can peel off the layers of judgmentalism and victimhood and guilt and separation, then all that's left is love. And what is love? I mean, that's all that my daddy, I call God daddy. He's my daddy because I feel close to him. And that's all he is. He's an emotion. I don't even think he's a mind. He's just emotion. He's just love. So really, it's very simple, I have discovered. The hard part is looking at the resistance that we have to all of this. There's so much resistance that we have to a lot of things on this earth. So if we can look at the resistance and look beyond it, then we can have heaven on earth. I truly believe that we can have heaven, we can become very close to having heaven on earth. And I do believe that someday we will on this earth. So I have a very positive outlook about, in spite of the things that happen in the world, I still have a very positive outlook because I want to see through God's eyes. And God doesn't see the stuff that we
you
see.
already are.
Yeah, because we already are. And that's part of
the illusion is that other things are possible.
Right. And if we view our brother or sister or whatever you want to call each other, if we view them as divine as we are, then we don't judge anymore. We're not judging. We're seeing probably more of the truth or reality of what is real. And that came off from the Course in Miracles. I mean, I had a good background with my growing up in my Catholic family, because as a child, I never believed that if you ate meat on Friday, you would go to hell. I never believed that. I didn't believe most of the stuff that they taught. But what I do is I take what's good from something and I use that. And I try to do that with the people in my life too, because nobody's perfect. So I try to look at the good and just see the good and realize that person is divine as well as I am. So that's it.
I think we should all follow Teresa.
Mother Teresa. You can call me Saint Teresa of Homestead.
We'll call you Mother Teresa. That was really good. Thank you very much. Come on, Jane. Come on, sweet Jane. Want to hear what's on your mind? Then we're gonna
Hi.
get to the man who's hiding in the black cave.
Yeah. Hey, hi everyone. Just so interesting because I can relate to so much of this as a growing up in a very fundamentalist Christian church. And at one stage, I think we even had Sunday school at our house. And it was, very much somehow or other we were considered to be better than everybody, which was just awful to live with. And what I struggled with was this teaching of Jesus and love, and that it was about love, but that wasn't happening. That wasn't happening at home, but I held on to that. And I've always had in my head where it says in the Bible, God is love. And I just held on to that all my life. And I stopped going to church for about 30 years. And then I started going to an Anglican church. And I loved that because they were real. They would swear, they would drink, they would do life. And instead of this, we won't drink, we're not going to, this sort of holier than thou thing, which we're just not. We're just these crazy, beautiful, broken, lovely humans. And all I can say is that more recently, over the last few years, I feel that sense of being the receptor, the receiver, because I write myself. I call it spirit writing. I have a few people that do this, and I ask spirit, what would you have me know today, or specifically ask questions and write it down. And I always get the most beautiful, loving guidance. And I recently did something where I literally wrote a letter to me from love. And it was the most incredible experience. And I, through it, connected to the little girl of little Jane, who was very hurt. And without going into all of it, I felt through that, because I wrote to her after it. I wrote to little Jane. And I had this incredible healing experience this is just in the last week, where I feel like the pain of little Jane, I literally had this image of me holding her hand and bringing her into the light out of the dark. And I had an image of her dancing in the sun, in the light, on a piece of grass. And I will hold on to that beautiful image of her never being back in that darkness. And I feel like and I really want this to stay. Please, love, God, let this stay. I feel like all of me is here. And I feel like there's some healing, there's amazing healing happening just from that. I'm realistic.
Did you check where the planets were?
No, I should tell you the date.
Astrology show. Yeah. It cannot happen unless the planet is there. They're one and the same. Your story is wonderful. I think it's
a beautiful, thank you.
Fantastic.
Jane, take a look at the time too, because you're going to
Yeah.
blow your mind when you see how things relate.
Liza, go ahead. Thank you, Rick.
I just loved hearing your story, Jane. And I want to validate that, because I've had very similar experiences healing through talking to myself as a child and comforting myself as a child. And I would recommend that to anybody here, because we all, as I talked about before, we've all inherited a trauma of some kind. And as little children, as Teresa, I think Teresa kind of touched on this too, you can feel very guilty as a child, or afraid, and not really understand why. And we carry that through. But by talking to our child and letting that child know that we love them and that everything's okay, and to do the kinds of things that you talked about, Jane, is enormously healing and freeing.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. We are going to Sean next, and then to John. But I don't know what's going to happen in the ensuing weeks. I don't know how I'm going to just keep going back to astrology. But the planets are insisting right now. They're insisting that the crap be set aside. And all these Trumpers that love Trump because they think he's going to do away with the junk, they're feeling errors. They just don't feel it correctly. They're correct. They're feeling errors. We need to all work together. And it seems to me like through the evening, every testimonial got better and better and better each time. Sean and then John. Come on, Sean. Come out of your closet there. There you are.
I'm the light in the darkness.
You're a light in the dark. You're the dark in the light. John, talk to us, man.
Yeah, so well, I hear everybody saying how they grew up. So I grew up with a Christian background family, but they didn't all go to church really, but they were heavy into it, especially my grandmother. But beyond that, now at my age right now at this moment, I hear this is just my view. Like, not only am I here to see what I'm not, it's like I'm here to not tether the spirit, but just come here to see what I'm not and learn how to see the thing that I'm not, to recognize the difference. You understand? And just because everything that I want, I pretty much get, or if I need, I get, I don't know if it has anything to do with this manifesto thing in human design, but I just don't see too many problems. It's all about my energy, because everything is energy. So once I keep my energy clean, that's what I get. Even if I walk into a dark scene, as long as I stay calm and collective, everything goes how it's supposed to go. What else am I? As long as I could be calm and collective in every single situation, what more can I do? So with that, I find peace, and I live life just learning all the time. I just keep myself as like an open portal, but that doesn't mean I attach to every single thing. I just let whatever I get come through me, and I just don't hold on to anything and just keep flowing with nature. And that's really it.
We need to make sure this gets on YouTube. Thank you, Sean. That's beautifully said. I just keep getting higher and higher by listening to each person after the next. Come on, we gotta talk to the lawyer here and see what's on your mind, John.
I'll tell you, Teresa said my story much better than I could. I appreciate everything everybody said, but I grew up as a Catholic too, and I went to a seminary because I went away to become a priest, and I spent 8 years in the seminary, and I left when I was 22 because I saw that the priesthood wasn't what I thought it was, and I didn't know what to do, and if I did this and I did that, I became a social worker, a drug counselor, and I was in graduate school, and I was working on a doctorate in philosophy because I was, really good at that. And then I realized that that's a dead end too, because what can you do with a PhD in philosophy? So I became a lawyer, and I did really well with law, but something was always bothering me, because when I was a little child, I felt the way Teresa talked about. And I began to think that, with maybe there isn't really a God, maybe this was an illusion. And that really bothered me. So one night, I had a vision of God, actually. I saw God. And in that, it was total love, nothing but love. And I realized that everything I thought I knew was wrong. Everything. I was wrong about everything. I had to start all over. And it was after that I discovered the Course in Miracles, which was the closest thing that I ever found that expressed what I saw. Just God, and how God, I'm not really separate from God. And God is nothing but love. So I mean, what Teresa said, that's the way I feel. And the only thing that expresses that, the Catholic Church doesn't, no religion expresses it. No religion really talks about the real God. And the God that is real is so close to us that we are an expression of it. And every day I am so happy. I feel like Teresa. And all my legal cases I tried and I won, nothing. That means nothing. And the legal system is a game. The lawyers always win. Even if they lose, they get paid. If you represent somebody, they go to jail. You don't go to jail, you get paid. And it's just that money is nothing. It means nothing. But of course, we have to eat and so forth. So we live in this world, but we need something that helps us to see why. Why are we even existing? What do we exist for? And so anyhow,
I think tonight was kind of a clearinghouse
yeah.
to get it.
I endorse everything everybody said, especially Teresa.
Excellent, John. Very, very good. Rick?
Yeah. I heard in the words of Susan regarding the intercom that there is a lot that is missed, at least in American culture, with the church, because there's talk of faith and leaning on God and asking, seeking, and knocking, but there's very, outside of the grocery list of what you might want to ask for, there's very little encouragement to meditate and just listen. And that's a missing component. And I think it comes from other spaces. Mindfulness, maybe. Buddhism, perhaps. There's definitely a lot of balance that could be brought to people's faith experience. And I think, too, that idea of the grocery list clerk that people treat God as is very risky for some of the more unhealthy manifestations of the divine. And Jane, I love the work you're talking about. It's really wonderful inner child and shadow work. We really must tend to that, because as children, we did not have the words to understand our emotions at the ages we found ourselves wounded. Only after becoming adults, and I don't mean at 18 you can figure it out. You need time and experience as the adult to go ahead and then look back and say, oh, that's what I experienced, so that you can then attend to your wounds. And if we as children couldn't say it, then our parents, even the best of them, were not able to address those needs, because it's not always obvious. For all the introverted children, there are really hard to express ideas. Parents are not understanding what's in your poor heads. We just don't get it. We would live, die, and bleed for you, but we can't go ahead and put something into words that you can't put into words first. And we need to go ahead and take the adult responsibility in our deeper understanding and tend to our emotional needs that were not met, because we had flawed parents who were raised by flawed parents, raised by wounded parents, and back generation after generation. It is the current generation's space that we must try to do our own work. And I hope that more effective spirituality leads us in that path.
one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was how, thank you, Rick. I wanted to talk about how Pluto and Eris will continue. The natal Pluto in the US chart will continue to be squared by Eris for 20 more years. But I wanted to show you and point out how you flip it around. That's also very indicative that our power is arriving. You can hear it. You can hear it. People brushed aside the junk. You can hear the people disowning the stuff. You can hear people yearning for the real truth and the real techniques. And it's all the same technique. Just like Jane said, it's all the same technique. 7 years ago, I started this Astrology Unplugged. I have no idea where we're going. But about 2 months ago, I gave it to the Holy Spirit. And I think he's done a pretty good job. We just got to get Sean out of the dark. Where are you, Sean? We want to see you in the light, brother. Everybody, it's been just, I can't even put it into words. Thank you, Sean. We want to see you. Anybody got anything to say finally? Don't be afraid. Yes, Linda, you go ahead, dear.
Take your mic, put your microphone.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make a connection between biblical Christianity and what I think of is the commandment that is the least understood, which is love your neighbor as yourself, because the as yourself part is critically important. I mean, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. You just can't do it. And if you connect that to the work of moving out of your trauma by loving the child that didn't get what they need, that's how you love yourself, is you go back and do that. You go back and do that work. And when you go back and do that work, you don't need to be in a bad marriage because you didn't get any love as a child. You don't, you're not angry because all of that old childhood stuff, it's like, like all my stuff I had with my mother, it's so gone. I mean, I wake up every day and I love my mother, who was a massively crazy, abusive woman, but she also had amazing talents. And if it wasn't for her crazy abusiveness, I wouldn't be how I am now. I mean, that was the road I had to walk. So we have to love ourselves, and how we best start to love ourselves is to start loving that traumatized kiddo that didn't get what they need. And then we're not reacting out of need, we're reacting out of wholeness. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Healing our own self
Right.
is a step in healing the world.
Right, exactly. And then, and for me as a teacher, man, it's just like I'm an open well. I mean, come and get it. It's all there. If you need, if you're not feeling loved, come on and see me. And I'm going to say, hey, love yourself, kiddo. You're smart. You're good. You can do it. It doesn't matter what mom and dad say, so.
We got some very clever, smart people on this show. Claudia, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to say this really quickly, and it goes along with what Linda and Jane and a lot of people have said. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. And coincidentally, what Jane has been talking about, writing a letter from love, is something that she started doing because she teaches about creative writing, but also she's a very spiritual woman. What I wanted to say is, she says it has literally changed her life by writing letters to herself from love. She calls it letters from love, and she teaches that. So it's really a simple thing. Do with it what you will, but it can be really, really, truly transformative if you do it consistently as you want to, as often as you want to. But Jane, I believe what you said, because I've done stuff like that, and it really is so healing. Elizabeth Gilbert, Letters from Love.
All you had to do was look at Jane.
I know.
You can tell she had like
it's so
a shiny billboard.
Oh, you darlings. Honestly, Claudia, it was recently that I've connected into the Elizabeth Gilbert, and she's been fabulous as well anyway with what she's been writing and whatever. But it's interesting that I'd not literally written a letter from love. Mm-hmm. And it did something different in here somehow in my heart and mind. So yes, whereas before I would write Dear Holy Spirit or Dear Divine. And even though that is love, there's something different about, for me, using that word love and the vibration or whatever it is, the energy in that, the beautiful energy. So yeah, thank you, Claudia. Elizabeth Gilbert, definitely she's one to listen to, connect to it too on Instagram, funnily enough.
Yep. That's all I wanted to say.
See, John, I don't need to write a book. People need to just watch his video. It's already here. Liza, anything else?
No, it's been a lovely evening. It's been beautiful. I loved hearing everything everyone had to say.
I don't know what else to say, but the good things happen when I shut up. So. See you next week.
Thanks, Liza. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Thank everybody.
Love you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Rick.
you.
Bye.
Joby says bye.
Love and
Thank you,
blessings,
bye.
everyone.